like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
Welcome back, everybody. We're diving into a case today that really had a happy ending, thank goodness. But it was a close one for a while there. A missing child case down in Florida, thankfully. They found him safe just this morning.
Yeah, anytime a kid goes missing, it's scary. But this one was really had people on edge.
Absolutely. And we're going to be taking a look at this whole thing using a news article from FOX 13 too. Tampa Bay, they were covering it as it all happened. So yeah, we'll walk you through everything with their reporting.
Good stuff. Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be an interesting deep dive.
For sure. So we're talking about a 5-year-old boy, Jace Saunders, disappeared from Tavares, Florida on Sunday afternoon.
Tavares.
Yeah. And he was last seen with his grandmother, Kelly de Silva.
So right away, you've got a missing child, and it's with a relative, which, that adds another layer to things.
And the article mentions that Jace is semi-verbal and has autism. So that obviously adds to the concern, just thinking about it in that kind of situation. He might have had trouble communicating or understanding what was going on around him.
Oh, absolutely. And when a child is that young and can't really communicate well, the sense of urgency just skyrockets.
Yeah, for sure. The news article also mentioned that they might be traveling in a black Honda Accord. Those little details can sometimes be really important in these cases.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes that's all it takes. Someone spots the car and boom, they find the kid.
Exactly. So the authorities issued an Amber Alert almost immediately.
Now, for those who might not know, can you tell us a little bit about Amber Alerts?
Yeah, so Amber Alerts are those emergency messages that go out when a child has been abducted and there's a serious risk to their safety.
Right. It's not just any missing child case. It's got to be a really serious situation for them to issue an Amber Alert.
Exactly. They really blast it out everywhere, too. Social media, news, websites, even those electronic billboards on the highway.
Yeah, you see those things flashing and, it's serious.
Yeah. And the message with this one was really clear. If you see them, don't approach. Just call 911 right away.
Smart move.
Yeah.
You don't want anyone trying to be a hero and potentially making things worse.
For sure. Now, here comes the good news. Jace was found safe Monday morning.
Oh, thank goodness. That's what you want to hear.
I know, right? It really shows how effective those Amber Alerts can be and how people paying attention can make a real difference.
Yeah, it's like the whole community rallies together to find that kid.
Exactly. So Jace's grandmother, Kelly de Silva, was taken into custody for questioning, and thankfully Jace is doing okay. He's going to be in the care of the Florida Department of Children and Families for now.
Okay, so he's safe, which is the most important thing. But now the questions start coming. What exactly happened? Why did the grandmother take him? Was she trying to protect him from something or someone?
Yeah, there are a lot of unanswered questions. And here's another layer to this whole story. Jace's parents, Taylor Judy and Brandon Saunders, they were arrested on Sunday as well.
Okay, wait, so both parents were arrested?
Yeah, but it wasn't for kidnapping. It was for something called interference of child custody.
Interference of child custody. Now, that's a new one for me.
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
So it's a legal term that basically means someone is preventing a parent or guardian from having access to their child. It's not exactly the same as parental kidnapping, which is usually a much more serious charge.
Okay, so it sounds like there was already some kind of custody issue going on within the family.
It seems that way. The details about what happened with the parents are still unclear, but it does tell us that there was some tension there even before this abduction happened.
Right, and to add to that, the article mentioned that there was already an investigation going on with the Florida Department of Children and Families. They call it DCF.
DCF.
Okay.
So that suggests that there were already concerns about the children's safety and well-being even before all this happened.
Yeah. So now we're talking about a situation where you've got a missing child, you've got parents who are arrested for interfering with custody, and you've got a pre-existing DCF investigation. It's like a puzzle with all these different pieces.
Exactly. And that makes the grandmother's actions even more confusing. Was she trying to protect Jay somehow? I mean, that's what a lot of people are wondering right now.
Yeah, you can't help but think that. Maybe she thought she was doing what was best for him, but obviously taking it without permission is a big no-no.
Yeah, no matter what her intentions were, she's now facing those serious charges, kidnapping and interference of child custody. And the authorities are actually planning to hold a news conference later today to release more information.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So they're going to give us more details about what happened and maybe some insight into the grandmother's motive?
Hopefully, yeah. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on that, and we'll let you know what we find out. But, this whole case, it really makes you think, how many other families out there are dealing with similar struggles behind closed doors? Custody battles, child welfare concerns.
Absolutely. We only see the tip of the iceberg with a story like this. But underneath it all, there are so many families facing these really complex and difficult challenges.
Right, and it makes you wonder about the systems we have in place to help these families and to protect children. Are they working? Are they effective enough?
Yeah, that's a big question. And it's not just about reacting to crises like this one. It's about figuring out how to prevent them from happening in the first place.
For sure. So we know that Jace is safe now. That's the most important thing. But what happens next? What about his parents? What about the grandmother? And what about that ongoing DCF investigation?
Lots of loose ends to tie up.
Yeah, we've got a lot more to unpack here. So let's take a break and then we'll come back and dive into the resolution of this case and what it all means for everyone involved.
It's definitely a messy situation. And while we're all relieved that Jace is safe, we can't forget about the legal trouble everyone is in.
Right, because there are consequences, even though it turned out okay. So let's start with the grandmother, Kelly Da Silva. Those are some pretty heavy charges she's facing.
Yeah, kidnapping and interference with child custody. That's serious stuff. It tells you that law enforcement thinks she took Jace on purpose and put him in danger.
And then there's Jace's parents. They were arrested too, right?
Yeah, but their arrest was before the abduction even happened, remember? They got hit with interference with child custody charges.
Oh, right. So maybe their actions had something to do with the grandmother taking Jace?
It's a possibility. Interference with child custody that can cover a lot of different things, like breaking custody agreements or trying to turn a child against the other parent. We don't know the specifics of their case, but the police will probably look into whether what they did pushed the grandmother to take Jace.
Okay, so what happens now? What's next for everyone?
Well, first, they'll all have court hearings to deal with those charges.
Mm-hmm.
The grandmother's case is probably going to be more complicated because of the kidnapping charge.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what about the evidence? Will we get to hear what the prosecution has against her?
Yeah, eventually. And it'll be interesting to see if her lawyer tries to say that she was just trying to protect Jace.
That would be a tough sell, though, right? I mean, she still took him without permission.
Definitely. But sometimes those defenses work. You never know. And then there's the DCF investigation.
Yeah.
How does this whole thing affect that?
Right. I forgot about that. So that was already happening before the abduction. It sounds like this is going to make things even more complicated for them.
Oh, yeah, for sure. This incident is going to be a huge part of their investigation now. They'll be looking into everything, the family relationships, the reason for the custody battle, and whether there were any warning signs of abuse or neglect that they missed.
So much for DCF to figure out. This whole thing really makes you think about the tough job they have, dealing with all these difficult situations.
Oh, absolutely. They're constantly dealing with limited resources and heartbreaking cases. They have to make really tough decisions sometimes without all the information they need.
It's got to be a stressful job, for sure. So in this particular case, what could DCF do now?
Well, that depends on what they find out during their investigation and what they think is best for Jace. They might offer the family some services to try and fix the underlying problems, or they could set up supervised visits for the parents.
And if they think Jace isn't safe with his parents?
Then they might think about putting him in foster care, either temporarily or long-term. It all comes down to finding the best and safest place for him to be.
That makes sense. It really shows how complicated these situations can be.
Well,
there's no easy fix, and it all comes back to doing what's best for the child.
Exactly. And while the courts and DCF do their thing, we can't forget that Jace is just a little boy who went through something really scary. He needs support and stability to help him deal with what happened.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We tend to focus on the adults, but it's easy to forget about the impact on the child.
Yeah. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I think it's important to think about the bigger picture. What does this case tell us about child welfare in general?
So, what are the big takeaways?
Well, it really highlights the importance of Amber Alerts, how they work and how effective they can be. Also, the complicated nature of custody disputes, and of course, the challenges faced by Child Protective Services.
It's a good reminder that we all have a responsibility to look out for kids and speak up if we see something that doesn't seem right.
Absolutely. Child welfare is everyone's business. The more we work together, the safer our kids will be.
Well said. So we've talked about the legal side of things and what DCF might do now, but there's still the question of what happens to Jace in the long run.
Yeah. What about his future?
That's what we'll look at next. So let's move on to the final part of our deep dive and explore the long-term implications of this case for Jace and everyone else involved. It's easy to get caught up in all the legal stuff and the drama, but we got to remember there's a little boy at the heart of all this who's been through a lot.
Right, Jace. He's the priority here.
Yeah.
And hopefully he'll have access to some good therapy to help him deal with all this trauma.
Yeah, especially with him being autistic and semi-verbal. I can't even imagine how scary and confusing this whole thing must have been for him.
Absolutely. Kids with autism, they really thrive on routine and familiar surroundings. So to be taken from all that and thrown into a stressful situation like this, it's got to be overwhelming.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So looking ahead, what are the long-term implications for Jace, especially with all the family issues going on?
That's where it gets really tricky. DCF is going to be looking at everything, the custody battle, the grandmother's actions, any history of problems in the home to try and figure out what's the best place for Jace in the long run.
So what are some of the options here? What could happen?
Well, one possibility is that he could go back to his parents. That's called family reunification. But DCF would have to be convinced that the parents can provide a safe and stable home for him. They might make them take parenting classes or counseling and they keep a close eye on things.
And what if DCF doesn't think the parents are up to it?
Then they look at other options. Maybe placing Jace with other family members, or maybe even foster care as a temporary thing, or maybe even long-term. The main goal is to find a place where he'll be safe and supported.
It's a tough situation, and I'm sure it's incredibly hard on the family. This whole case really shows you how important it is to have a strong system in place to protect kids.
You're absolutely right. It highlights all the challenges involved with families, with child protective services, and with just making sure kids are safe.
It's a good reminder that we all need to be paying attention and speaking up if we see something that seems wrong.
Couldn't agree more. Every single one of us has a role to play in keeping kids safe.
So we've covered a lot in this deep dive. We started with a missing child and then looked at the legal system and child protective services and all the long-term effects on everyone involved.
It's a complicated story for sure, but hopefully it's gotten people thinking about these issues and how we can all do our part to make things better.
And that's what it's all about, right? Raising awareness and hopefully preventing these kinds of things from happening in the future.
Exactly. Well said.
Well, that about wraps things up for today's deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us as we explored this case and all the complexities of child welfare.
It's been a great discussion.
We hope you learned something today and that it's inspired you to stay informed and involved in your own communities. Remember, every child deserves to feel safe and loved, and we all have a part to play in making that happen.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.